The husband said to his wife, "I'm going out with my friends for a drink tonight." She replied,
Okay.
After a while, their son walked over and said, "Mom, I got my midterm exam results today. They weren't good." The son expected his mother to scold him, but to his surprise, she calmly said,
It's okay. It's not a big deal if the results aren't ideal. If you keep working hard, you'll do better next time. It's up to you.
The next day, the daughter approached her mother with a nervous expression and said, "Mom, I accidentally broke the TV." The daughter was very afraid that her mother would be angry, but to her surprise, her mother said,
It's okay. Take the broken TV to the repair shop.
The family was used to the mother's temperamental outbursts. But now seeing her so calm, everyone was very worried and asked her, "What's wrong? Why are you suddenly so calm?" She smiled and replied,
It took me a long time to understand that everyone is responsible for their own lives. I realized that my pain, worry, anxiety, and stress cannot solve your problems, but instead add to mine. I can only give advice when you ask for help, but whether you take it is entirely up to you. Whatever decisions you make, good or bad, you must bear the consequences yourself. I am not responsible for anyone else's actions. I can only control my own reactions. My duty is to care for you, love you, and encourage you. But beyond that, solving problems and finding happiness is entirely up to you. Therefore, I should remain calm and let you solve your own problems.
The family was speechless. From that day on, the family began to function better because everyone knew exactly what they needed to do. One day, a little boy accidentally broke a vase that his mother treasured. His father immediately asked if the child was hurt and, after understanding the situation, softly explained that the vase was a precious item left by the grandmother to the mother. Seeing the child's fearful eyes, the father gently said, "This is just an accident. What's important is that we learn from our mistakes." Together they cleaned up the fragments of the vase. Sitting on the ground, the little boy looked worried. The father asked, "What should we do now?" After some thought, the child suggested buying a new vase as an apology. At the supermarket, the father encouraged the boy to choose a vase and suggested buying a bouquet of flowers as compensation. After returning home, the child placed the vase back in its original place, but the father softly said, "Honesty is the best policy. We should tell your mother the truth." The child hesitated, but finally mustered the courage to tell his mother everything and presented her with the new vase and flowers. The mother's expression changed from surprise to gentleness. She hugged the child, showing understanding and appreciation for his honesty. In the evening, the mother prepared a special dinner to celebrate the love and honesty in their family. From that day on, the child always treated everything with honesty and actively sought to solve problems. A man worked late into the night, tired and frustrated. Suddenly joyfully discovered his 10-year-old son waiting for him at the door. "Dad, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, what's the question?" "Dad, how much do you earn in an hour?" The man, returning to his frustration, angrily questioned, "Why would you ask such a thing? It's not something you should be concerned about. I'll just want to know. How much do you earn per hour?" The boy pleaded. "If you must know, I earn $10 per hour." "Oh," the boy answered with his head down. Then he lifted his head and said, "Dad, can you lend me $5? The father exploded. Money. The man walked to the boy's room, opened the door, and asked, "Are you asleep, son?" "No, Dad, I'm awake," the boy replied. "El may have been too harsh earlier," the man admitted. "After a long and frustrating day, I took my anger out on you. Here's the $5 you wanted." The boy sat up straight, smiling happily. "Oh, thank you, Dad." Then, reaching under his pillow, he took out a few crumpled bills. Seeing that the boy already had money, the father became annoyed again. The boy slowly counted the money and looked up at his father. "You already have some money, why do you need more?" the father complained. "Because what El had before wasn't enough, but now it is," the boy replied. "Dad, now El have $10. Can El buy an hour of your time? Please come home early tomorrow, I want to have dinner with you." Time is the most precious gift, and the company of family is the most valuable wealth. So, while pursuing career success, do not neglect family and love, as they are the true sources of happiness. In an interview, an Indian billionaire was asked, "Sir, do you remember the happiest moment in your life?" The billionaire thought for a moment and then slowly spoke. "I went through 4 stages in life and finally understood what true happiness is." He said that the first stage was when he desperately accumulated wealth and resources. At that time, he thought that wealth would bring happiness, but in fact, even though he had wealth, he did not feel inner satisfaction. The second stage was when he started collecting precious items, hoping to gain happiness by owning more valuable things. However, he soon realized that the value of these items was only temporary, and the sense of fulfillment they brought was also short-lived. In the third stage, he acquired a huge business project and became the dominant supplier of 95% of diesel in India and Africa. At that time, he thought he had reached the peak and that happiness was just around the corner. But even after achieving such great success, he still did not experience the happiness he was seeking. Until the fourth stage, an event happened that changed his life. A friend of his asked him to buy wheelchairs for about 200 disabled children and hoped he would personally deliver the wheelchairs to the children. The billionaire agreed to his friend's request, but at his friend's insistence, he went to the scene with his friend and personally handed the wheelchairs to the children. When he saw the children sitting in the wheelchairs, their faces glowing with happiness, he suddenly understood what true happiness was. The children's smiles, genuine and pure, filled him with an indescribable warmth. Just as he was about to leave, a child grabbed his leg. He bent down and gently asked, "Do you need anything else?" The child looked up at him and softly said, "I want to remember your face so that when I meet you in heaven, I will recognize you and thank you again." At that moment, a profound change occurred in the billionaire's heart. He finally understood that true happiness does not come from wealth, possessions, or power, but from selfless giving and genuine connection with others. One day, a girl walked into the professor's office. After a moment of silence, she spoke and said, "Professor, I don't plan to continue with this class." The professor was stunned for a moment and asked in confusion, "Why? Can you tell me the reason?" The girl sighed and said, "I've noticed that some students are playing on their phones, some are chatting, and some are even sleeping. It's hard for me to concentrate on the lesson, and I even feel uncomfortable because some people are staring at me." The professor quietly listened and, after a moment of contemplation, asked, "Before you make your decision, can I ask you to do one thing?" The girl nodded. "Of course, Professor, please tell me." The professor handed her a glass of water and said, "Please hold this glass of water and walk around the classroom twice, but make sure not a single drop of water spills." The girl carefully took the glass and walked around the classroom twice. Finally, she returned to the professor and said, "I did it." The professor smiled and asked, "Did you notice anything unusual while you were walking? For example, did you see anyone playing on their phones, chatting, or dozing off?" The girl was momentarily stunned and replied, "No, I was just focused on the glass of water, making sure not to spill a drop." The professor nodded, speaking in a gentle tone. "When you walk into the classroom, you should focus on your studies, just like you focused on holding the glass. In this way, no matter what happens around you, you won't be distracted, and even the inappropriate behavior of others won't affect your progress. Focus on your goals and walk steadily forward so that you won't easily stray from your path." In my eyes, my parents always seemed to lack love for each other. Their lives were often shrouded in minor quarrels, like two perpetual adversaries. One day, a small incident changed my perspective. That morning, my father overslept due to working late the previous night, waking up just in time for a rush to work. He hurriedly prepared, not even having time for breakfast, and dashed out the door. Just then, my mother stopped him and handed him an umbrella. My father, in his haste, asked irritably why she would give him an umbrella on a sunny day. seemingly thinking her act was senseless. But my mother simply said quietly, "Take it. Don't be late." Though puzzled, my father took the umbrella and left in a hurry. At the end of the workday, a sudden downpour made my father realize my mother's thoughtfulness. Grateful, he bought a box of her favorite strawberries on his way home. Upon entering the house, he immediately embraced my mother, tenderly apologizing, and curiously asked how she knew it would rain. My mother replied with a smile, "Dear, I check the weather forecast every night. I didn't want to disturb you in your hurry this morning, so I could only remind you in this way. This story teaches you that true love between spouses is not always manifested in romantic gestures or sweet words, but more often in the small details of everyday life." A 10-year-old boy who was originally living happily with his mother. Until one day, when his mother came home, she looked indifferent and began to let him do all kinds of housework, and if he didn't do it well, he would be severely reprimanded. The little boy did not understand why the gentle mother had suddenly changed. Every day, he silently endured endless tears and grievances, and his mother's indifference made him feel cold. A few months later, my mother was admitted to the hospital due to illness. When he walked into the ward, his mother said to him with all her might, "Don't come again. What to do in a day and what not to do." At that moment, the little boy's heart was torn apart, and he vowed to never forgive her again. A month later, his mother died of illness, and the little boy wept silently, full of anger and loss. Soon, the father remarried and brought back the stepmother. Until this moment, the little boy finally felt the loss of his mother's love, and as he entered high school, the family's financial situation became strained. At this time, Dad took out a small box and said, "Your mother gave it to me before she died, so that you can only open it after you go to high school." The little boy impatiently opened the box and found a check and a letter inside. The letter reads, "My dear son, when you read this letter, I am no longer alive. You must remember how stern I was when I was alive, and my heart hurts every time I see you crying. Actually, I wanted to hug you, but I held back, because I was seriously ill, and I was afraid that you would be isolated in the future, that you would be unfair to me and your stepmother, so I chose to make you hate me. This check is $20,000, and your grandmother asked me to buy medicine and secretly saved it in the hope that it would be enough to pay for your tuition. If it's not enough, son, you've grown up and can fight for it on your own." After reading the letter, the little boy couldn't control the guilt and pain in his heart. He ran to his mother's grave and fell to his knees, tears raining down. When I was a child, my mother would sometimes, after a long day of work, prepare breakfast food for dinner. There is one night in particular that I remember very clearly. That day, she came home tired from work, but she still insisted on preparing dinner for our family. When she served the dinner on the table, I saw eggs, sausages, and a few pieces of burnt biscuits. My mother placed the food in front of my father. I sat there quietly, curious to see if my father would notice those burnt biscuits. However, to my surprise, my father simply picked up a biscuit, smiled at my mother, and then turned to me, gently asking, "How was your day at school?" I don't quite remember what I answered at that time, but I clearly remember watching my father as he spread butter and jam on that burnt biscuit, savoring it as if it was the most delicious food he had ever eaten. After dinner, I heard my mother apologizing to my father, saying that she had accidentally burnt the biscuits. I will never forget my father's response. "Honey, I really like burnt biscuits." His tone was so warm and sincere, as if those burnt biscuits were indeed his favorite food. That night, I went to say goodnight to my father and couldn't help but ask, "Dad, do you really like burnt biscuits?" My father gently held me in his arms and said, "Your mother worked hard all day today and she's really tired. Eating a few burnt biscuits once in a while isn't a big deal." He paused for a moment and then continued, "In life, there will always be some imperfect things and people, but the important thing is that we learn to tolerate and accept them. It is these small imperfections that make our lives richer and more colorful. Since then, I began to understand that true love is not about pursuing perfection, but about accepting those imperfections and finding beauty in each other's flaws.
One day, a wealthy man took his son on a trip to the countryside, wanting him to experience the life of poor people. They stayed in a very simple farm for a day and a night. After the trip, on their way back home, the father asked his son, "How did you like this trip?" The son replied, "It was amazing, Dad. This trip benefited me a lot." The father asked curiously, "Can you elaborate? What did you gain?" The son said excitedly, "I realize that we have only one dog, but they have 4. Our swimming pool extends only to the middle of our garden, but their stream has no end. At night, our garden has imported lanterns, but they have the entire starry sky. Our house extends to the edge of the fence, but they have the whole horizon." The father was a bit shocked. His son continued, "Thank you, Dad, for showing me how poor we are, aren't we? Everything depends on how you view life. If you have good health, a harmonious family, and a love partner, isn't that the true meaning of living a good life?"
When the world was still a blank canvas, God created the ox and said to it, "Hey, buddy, try living as a farmer. How about tilling the fields and enjoying 50 years of sunshine?" The ox rolled its eyes and responded, "Boss, this job is too hard. 50 years is too long. Just give me 20 years. You can take the rest back." God laughed and agreed. On the second day of creation, God decided to create the dog. He said to the dog, "Your task is simple. Guard the house and bark when someone approaches. How about 20 years for this job?" The dog glanced sideways at God and answered, "Guarding for 20 years? Too boring. I'll only take 10 years. You can take back the extra time." God reluctantly agreed. On the third day, it was the monkey's turn. "Little monkey, how about your performance skills? Make people laugh and relieve the stress. We live like humans, enjoying carefree happiness. For the next 30 years, we take on burdens like oxen, toiling away and enduring the scorching sun and dust for a living. In the following 10 years, we turn into monkeys, making funny faces to amuse our grandchildren. And in the last 10 years, we are like old dogs guarding the house, constantly pointing out what our children do wrong. The little boy was immersed in the world of video games every day, hardly communicating with his family or caring about the things around him. Seeing his sons increasingly thinning back, the father was filled with helplessness and anxiety. Finally, one day, he decided to take action and proposed a seemingly simple yet challenging condition to his son. "If you can stay away from any electronic devices for the next 24 hours and enjoy the simple pleasures around you, I will buy you a new high-end gaming console." The boy was skeptical but driven by curiosity, and the desire for a new gaming console, he accepted the challenge. With the electronic devices turned off, it was as if a new world had opened its doors. That day, he did not indulge in the virtual world but chose to go out. He walked in the sunlight, played with friends,